Hello, we will be beginning shortly in about 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. Just some additional information for the audience. There is a questions tab on the left side of your screen to ask us any questions during the session, and a chat tab where you can send some messages if you require to do so. Thank you.
So I'm seeing around 35 people have joined and we have hit 234. So we'll start. And this session is actually not getting recorded. So everything that I say is, going to be lost after I say it. So the people who are late, too bad. So, hi guys. I see a lot of familiar faces here. A big shout out to the NA superstar and everything for NA Manvika. Hello. And I also see that Vidhi has joined in, one of our big stalwarts. So, hi, Vidhi. Also, Banvika and Vidhi would have realized, and I'm sure a lot of the people who are hosting this session would realize that I find it very strange to talk in this manner when I can't see other people. So, do bear with me. Also, a big thanks to Soham Bagchi, who is hosting this session, and also, welcome to you guys. He is the architect, one of the architects of our website, and also a big support to us as a team. So, with that, and I also have to thank one person right off the top of everything, which is Mehek. She's our research and admin assistant in Nikore Associates, and she is doing a fantastic job. And today's presentation for Nikore Associates has been made by her. So I think I've thanked everyone, and if I have not, then I'll thank them later for sure. And with that, I just want to welcome everybody to the session. See, the reason and the sort of motivation for doing this was born out of the fact that I receive a lot of messages from people on a very regular basis. I've been getting these messages on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and through references, friends, relatives, that I want to go into international development, I want to go into public policy, but I don't know how to go about it. And I completely agree that this is a sector which is really hard to navigate, simply because there's no there's no set template of how do you actually navigate international development, or how do you actually navigate this sector, because there's no set template in terms of how you which organizations to join. There's no idea within these organizations, when you do join them, how do you even navigate within the organizations. So I think it's really important that when we're doing this, when we're saying that yes, it is my aspiration to actually join international development and actually join public policy, I have some idea of the landscape. You know, uh, some of the typical questions that I get when I'm on LinkedIn is, "Ma'am, could you please tell us about some internships in World Bank or in ADB?" And these messages come from people who are in their undergrad, you know. And at that point, I really don't even, sometimes I just don't reply, because of the simple fact that I can't tell a person who's in their undergrad that, look, I'm really sorry, but there's no chance that you're getting an internship with an international organization when you're in your undergrad, because there's an unsaid rule that you're typically going to get this kind of an internship only in one year enrolled in your master's, and then just before you graduate from your master's, because it's at that point that they feel that you're ready for an internship. And it's very different to actually work in an international organization versus working in the corporate sector, or working in the public sector, even in government offices, because at the end of the day, international organizations have a very, very bureaucratic and top heavy kind of work culture. So so these are some of my initial thoughts, but what I'm going to do is I'm now going to structure my thoughts a bit, and especially all those people who worked in Nikore Associates and who logged in today, they know that my favorite word is structure. So that's exactly what I'm going to do today. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about yourself. All of you would have received a form along with the invite for the registration, and you all participated in this poll. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the audience that's tuned in over here looks like, and what their preferences are, and what they're really trying to understand about working in international development. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. The second thing I'm going to do is tell you about, if you are to work in international development and public policy, what are your options? What are the different types of career paths that are available to you? And then the third thing I'm going to talk about, which is even more important than the options, is skills. Because if we don't talk about the kind of skills that are required in international development, you're never going to, even if you make it, you're never going to last. Because international development is a highly competitive sector. And in this sector, it's not possible for people to sustain themselves and to survive, because the kind of, again, it draws from the options discussion, but the kind of options that are available to you, they're very ephemeral. It's not possible for you to last in the sector if you're not good. So I'm going to come to that. So let's first start off, and I'll share my screen to really discuss what you guys have been telling us. So is my screen visible to everyone? Yeah, I think it is. Great. So the first question that we asked everybody is, which type of international organization would you like to work at? And overwhelming majority, 76%, have said that they'd like to work in a multilateral organization. Okay, sorry, didn't have slideshow on. I now have slideshow turned on. Okay, great. So 76% say multilateral organization. Now, I'm going to take a minute to explain what do I mean by this. A multilateral organization basically means an organization which is funded by a group of countries. So, for example, ADB, World Bank, United Nations, IMF, these are all multilateral organizations because these are funded by governments, as well as now, they are also accepting private sector sort of investments, and these organizations are sort of collectives of different countries and governments working together. So I think that the overwhelming interest is to work at multilateral organizations. Bilateral organizations, I think a lot of you may not actually know about bilateral organizations, so let me explain that. This is a situation like USAID, DFID, JICA, and what these mean is JICA, for example, is the Japanese Agency for International Cooperation and Development. So these do very similar work to ADB and World Bank and the UN. It's just that those are backed only by funding from a single government. So some of the larger, bilateral organizations are USAID is one of the biggest ones. You also have GIZ, which is the German government's international, agency. You have DFID, which is now shut down, which is the UK government's international agency, and they've shut it down because of the fact that they're running out of money. So definitely bilateral organizations are a riskier bet, because at the end of the day it's very likely that they, because their decision making there is only a function of a single government's decision, from a developed country typically. And multilateral organizations on the other hand have very very set institutional structures, and it's much easier to get jobs there because they are much bigger. And then, of course, there are now I feel that there are options in international organizations in the private sector as well. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, you have Clinton Foundation, Obama Foundation, you have the Clinton Health Access Initiative. So, and now Facebook will start its own foundation, the Chen Foundation. So, there are a lot of, rich, I would say, billionaires who are running their own foundations, and also Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation particularly is doing a lot of work with other organizations. So, for example, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation recently funded and has set up a new think tank at Korea University called iWage, which works entirely on gender and gender, sort of equality issues, typically functioning more like a very agile research center. So, there are a lot of these kind of agile organizations which are now coming up in the international development space. But of course, the charm of working at a multilateral, I completely get it because that was my dream as well. But I just want to say that I want to advise people to keep their options open, because there are many interesting projects that are being done by especially the private funded, sort of trusts and organizations that are coming up. Another very interesting organization in India, for example, is the Tata Trust. And when you go to the US landscape, there are a number of foundations and charities and development organizations which are entirely privately funded, which are working on not only on in development issues and development, on the frontiers of international development in within the developed world, or just in the US market, but also in Africa, also in East Asia. They may not be as present in India. In India, also, we have a number of large NGOs like Plan International, Care International, which are great organizations to work in, especially if your cause is more social in nature. But if you want to work more on the economic side, then definitely the preference for multilaterals is understandable, because when you're working in an NGO or in a community organization, then definitely your work will be much more focused on ground projects. Whereas if you want to combine research and policy together, then a multilateral organization or a bilateral organization would be a far better fit. So that's the level of aspiration that you guys are at. But my point is that don't get fixated with working in a multilateral. You could end up working at a private international organization or at a community organization or even at a bilateral and be doing very very interesting you know life changing work genuinely, because they are far more agile than multilaterals. So, a number of you are economics students. So, what would you like to do after a bachelor's in economics or in general after a bachelor's? And an overwhelming majority again wants to do a master's in public policy, which is great. But I also want to point out that in many cases, a master's in economics or a master's in any other stream, even international development or something which is specialized like local economic development is a very interesting stream, because local economic development doesn't just focus on public policy making, but also rather how do you actually design the implementation of different interventions. So here is where I'd like to point out the concept of what is policy, what is a program, and what is a project. So policy making really is about working at a very very national or state, in India's case a state level, where you just set the rules of the game, that yes, this is what my policy should look like. But at the end of the day, when it comes to actually implementing that policy or implementing it on the ground, you need sets of programs which are designed for the implementation of the policy. And then within each program, you'll have a set of small interventions, which are projects. I mean, by small, they can be in millions of dollars, but they will be like interventions which are in a specific area. So to give a concrete example, let's say that my policy, there was a policy that I worked on. It was called One District, One Product in Uttar Pradesh, which is now being scaled up to the central level. It was announced yesterday by the Ministry of the Industries Department. And the One District, One Product policy essentially says that it is the government will provide incentives for the development of indigenous handicrafts, handmade goods, which are sort of representative of a particular district. So, say for example, in Varanasi district in UP, they are supporting Banarsi saris or Banarsi silk, and they will give incentives for setting up production centers for that, or for research around product design, or for marketing, and linking up with export markets and skill training, and a whole set of initiatives around developing that industry. So that is the One District, One Product policy. Now, to actually implement that policy, what you need is a program. A program, which means that you need to set up an office, which they have set up. It's called the ODOP cell. And that ODOP cell now is running a program where they are doing diagnostic studies in each district to figure out what are the investments that are required in each district. So that's the ODOP program, which is being managed by an ODOP cell. And finally, in say Varanasi, when we've done the diagnostic study, we found that we need to set up a product design center, because the weavers there are too, while they're very proficient in making saris, the market for saris is shrinking. So they need to create different types of products, like even household furnishings, or lehengas, or scarves or dupattas, etc., to cater to a wider consumer market. So for that, the project then, which is being taken up in Varanasi, is to set up a product design center. So as you can see, it moves from policy to program to project. So when you're doing a master's, and when you're doing your higher education, it's extremely important to really think about what are the areas that you'd like to understand well. Just designing policy is not sufficient, and having an understanding of how to implement that policy, how to budget for that policy, which is what a master's in economics actually gives you a great hold over. And also, when we talk about program implementation, like complementing your masters with training courses or with practical work experience like an internship is very important when you're going about building your skill set for international development. Would you like to go abroad for your education? A lot of you have said that you'd like to go at a stage of masters or postmasters. This is fine, and a lot of you don't actually want to go. But the point is that, unfortunately or fortunately, the recruitment system in a lot of international organizations is very biased towards people who have at least had one degree abroad. It is extremely important to understand why this is so. Going abroad actually gives you a few skills which studying in India unfortunately don't give. The first one is, of course, a hold and appreciation of other cultures. See, when you're working in any international organization, especially a multilateral, when you might come in and start working on India projects, but eventually the aim for them is that if you're good, and the idea for them is to always select as many good people as possible to train you so that you can do projects in other countries and in other geographies as well. Now, if you lived and worked and studied in India all of your life, then there will then the recruiter as well as the managers that you work with will tend to stereotype you and say, Acha, okay, this person is a national consultant. They will only become a national staff. They can never move to the international arena. So, setting yourself apart right from the beginning to say that no, you actually have studied in an international environment and you understand different cultures, especially different developing countries. For me, what really helped was the fact that after I finished my master's at the LSE, I actually went and worked in Africa for about 2.5 years. And at that time, it wasn't a conscious decision. It just seemed very interesting to go. So I went. But later in my career, I realized how much that benefited me, because a lot of times when I would pitch for projects to be done in India, when I came back to India, I actually didn't know much about India because I'd been away for 4 5 years, and that was a plus. And I actually got a position or two higher than my peers who had stayed here. So I know that at this point in time the market is very uncertain, and we are in a COVID situation, and we are also not sure what the job market is going to look like. So that's a different thing. But in general, the basic principle of working in a multilateral organization is that the preference in those organizations is always going to be for somebody who has studied abroad as much as possible. Like a bachelor's plus master's will always be preferred over just a master's, but even a master's and postmasters is fine. Also, in terms of the level of education that you require to get into an international organization, you don't require a PhD. There are certain specific programs that do look for PhDs, but those are for research positions within these multilaterals, and most positions are not research positions. So, anyone who tells you that, oh, I mean, this is something I heard when I was growing up, that, if you want to go to World Bank, you must do a PhD in economics. I really don't think that you really need a PhD. I don't have a PhD to work in international development. You do need a master's. Without a master's, you'll face a lot of hurdles. So, but you need the right master's, and you need to go at the right time. So, after your bachelor's, I really recommend to everybody to at least take 2 years and work, and those 2 years should be spent working on field, on ground, and on live projects as far as possible. So my recommendation is not to jump straight into a master's, because of the fact that what is happening is that when I went for my master's, for example, the situation was that I didn't understand how to leverage a lot of opportunities which I got at LSE. Had I worked for maybe 1 or 2 years, I would have understood how to do that a little better. So definitely, plus for going abroad if you want to work in international development. And working after bachelor's for 1 or 2 years. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about over here, a lot of you have said, 47% of you have said that you'd like to work as a full-time employee of these organizations. Now, and around 30% have said that, yeah, we'd like to work as a consultant or an advisor, or these kind of positions. I just want to tell you that in international organizations, especially in ADB and World Bank, for young people, the opportunities for being a full time staff are very limited and also very uninteresting. Because when you are a junior staff member, your work is very mechanical, very administrative. It is not juicy at all. It's not technical. It's very we'd like to prepare a folder because the president of the World Bank is actually going to visit the India office, and you should work in you should do this folder, and you should do this small research piece, and you should do this brief, etc. And honestly, my advice is, rather than being a staff in the first 10 to 15 years of your career, you should focus on getting experience as a consultant in at least 4 to 5 different organizations, and then decide which one you'd like to work at. Because very honestly, you might work at, say, for example, in the private sector for a year or two, then you'd like to probably move and say, okay, can I now work in, say, get a project at the World Bank or as a short term consultant, do 1 or 2 projects, work with different teams. The only way to understand what sector you like, the only way to understand what teams you gel with, and the only way to sort of be sure about which organization you'd like to align yourself in the long term is to work at different places. An unsaid rule at most international organizations is that once you become staff, you're not going to leave that organization. So if I become staff at ADB today, then that's it. That's the height of where I'm going to reach, and I'm not moving away from ADB. Then I can say goodbye to World Bank, and to think that I'll ever be hired by World Bank as a staff, that's it's an unsaid rule, and it is imposed. So my advice to everybody is, stay a consultant at least into the first 10 to 15 years of your career, and you cannot become a consultant, staff, or take up any position unless you have 5 to 7 years of experience. You need to get 5 to 7 years of experience in the private sector, or in NGOs, or in any other sort of academic environment, whatever, outside of international organizations, before you target an international organization, because they need people with some experience. Even the person who is at entry level has at least 5 to 6 years of experience. So, with that, I'll just say, so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Great. So, these are just some of the practical tips that I wanted to talk about in terms of, this is basically a representation of what you guys have asked. But it also, ties into what I was saying about the different roles that are available in international organizations, and what are the different types of international organizations that are out there. Now, having said all of this, and having painted a picture of the landscape that's out there, so as just a quick recap of everything that we've discussed. First, we've discussed that there is a variety of international organizations out there. There is, of course, the standard multilateral organizations like the ADBs, the World Banks, and the UNs of the world. But there is also a whole new emerging category of agile, private sector funded, international NGOs, international foundations, which can be equally fulfilling and very, very interesting to work at. So, that's the first takeaway from this entire slideshow that I want to, drill into everyone's head. Please don't get obsessed with just the ADBs and World Banks. Second, you must be sure about the sector that you want to specialize in before you join the international organization. So because what will happen is you'll get selected for, say for example, a consultant for the transport sector, and then you'll always be in that team. It'll be very difficult for you to sort of move from transport sector to urban to MSME to industrial corridors. I mean, it is possible, but it takes a lot of time, and you will still have to spend a considerable part of your time working in transport. You'll be known as a transport person, for example. So that's why before you come into the international organization, spend 5 to 7 years of your career really working in different private sector organizations, and spending maybe 6 months on one project, 1 year on another project, and really understand what you like, what sectors interest you, and what work interests you. Does research work interest you? Does live projects and working on ground, does that interest you? So know yourself and take those 5 7 years of your career to build your own interest, and as you build your interest, trust me, your expertise will develop. And it's only when you have a hold on a subject, really strong hold on a subject, that these international organizations will see you and they will want you. Because at the end of the day, they don't want an economics graduate, they have many. But an economics graduate who has gone and worked in Bihar for 2 years on, say, a Jivika livelihood project with women, and also wants to build toilets and work on Swachh Bharat and work with urban waste management. Yes, perfect. Now you've distinguished yourself, right? But to do that, you need 5 7 years of experience. So remember that an entry level position at any of these organizations is 5 7 years away, a postmasters. And of course, an internship you can do, and an internship is fine, but that's something that you can do it in only at master's level, just before you graduate from your masters, or in between the 2 years, and not before a masters. So when you, and also when you're on LinkedIn and you're conducting yourself, and say you want to reach out to somebody, you want to reach out to, say people reach out to me, and they write to me, I'd like an internship, and they're first years. Just take a step back and think about the other person. They won't even reply to you. You should only reach out to people for, in these organizations, once you know that you are qualified to reach out to them. Otherwise, don't do it. It's very important to conduct yourself well. The other tip that I will give is really about framing your own point of view. Now, in many international organizations, they want people who don't voice their point of view, but they have a point of view. I know it's very strange, but this is the culture. They don't want people to have much of an opinion when it comes to doing what their boss is telling them to do. They just want people who will just do it, and they will do it well, of course. But at the same time, the person, when they have an offline conversation with them, which is not about work, but it is about, it's a coffee chat, or if it's just a drink, or a dinner. At that point, they would want you to be intelligent, well informed, and have an opinion on policy matters and other things. And this is because when a program is being designed, it is being designed by, in collaboration with, maybe somebody who is an international staff, or an international, because with the structures in these organizations are very bureaucratic. It's being designed by somebody who's very senior, and they need the team to just do what they're telling them to do at that point, not question them much. Of course, give inputs when it's very critical, or and when asked for it, but without asking, they don't want to, they just want to get it done. But when they are picking their team, they want their team to be extremely intelligent, well informed, and keep them informed of policy matters, and of international developments, and national events, because that can spark an idea in their head. So it's very important that when you get into an international organization, at whatever point in your career, you should know how to conduct yourself. It's as important as trying to break, because remember that your first brush will always be like a 6 month internship or a 3 month internship or a 3 month contract, a consulting contract or a 6 month consulting contract. And you are under scrutiny in those 6 months, in those 7 months, in that 1 year, 2 years, first 3 years of working with an international organization, you are under scrutiny. You can be chucked out at any point because there are 10 or 15 people at least who can replace you. So you have to become irreplaceable, non substitutable, and you have to become uh, friends with people in the team. It's extremely important that they get along with you, because if they don't, then they're going to replace you with somebody that they do get along with, you know. Because remember that when people are working in international organizations, they work there for life. They don't leave once they become staff. So it's extremely important that you have this attitude narrowed down of how you're going to conduct yourself even before you enter an international organization. You can't go in and then complain. You can't complain. Whatever work they give you, you have to do it. You cannot complain. In corporate sector, you can complain. You can say, oh, can this be done better? In an international organization, you cannot do that because their systems are so set and they're so established. They're not going to be changed for just one person. So, you have to have these things in your mind that when you're going into these organizations, you're not going to change them. They can change you, you can't change them. It's literally like that because they're too big. So that is one of the main reasons why I have chosen to remain a consultant for so long, is because a lot of the institutional processes and admin, sort of slowdowns then don't affect me. I just go in, I do my work, I come out, and I submit my documents. I get along with everyone because I'm not in the politics of who gets the next promotion or who goes here and who goes there, and it really matches with my personality. So this is why I said that even before you go in, it's important to have your own preferences and personality set, because when you go in, you have to play the long game. Then you're in there. Once you're in their eyes. So these are some of the tips I wanted to share today. And the most important thing that I'm now going to talk about is what are the skills that you need in order to sustain your job. See, people always talk about getting in. Frankly, if you do 5 years of work on ground in a development organization, development space, with an international degree, and then you apply for, or you network for an opportunity. I mean, obviously applying to open opportunities is one option, but the best option is to always network at conferences, events, and try to find like-minded people who can give you some work. So that's the best way to get in. And but once you've gotten in, it's also important that they renew your contract, because remember, your first contract is just going to be 6 months and they're just trying you out. That first 6 months doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get renewed. Your work has to be good enough for them to take you again for the next 6 months, and then for the 6 months after that, and then for a year, and then 2 years, and then 3 years, and then not want to let you go, and rather keep on expanding the work that you get. So, that is much more important than just getting in. So, once you're in, what do you need? You need three very important skills. Number one, soft skills, way more important than any of your technical skills. How you conduct yourself, how you speak to your boss, how you speak to your client, how you speak on the phone, how you speak in an informal setting when you guys are all having fun, how you speak in a formal setting when you're in a meeting, or rather, don't speak at all. Do you get frustrated when they don't let you speak? There are times when that happens. You'll be sitting with your boss, your boss's boss, your boss's boss's boss, who'll have flown in from, say, a Manila or a Washington for this meeting with a minister. You are sitting in the corner of the room, and you're used to being, on the other hand, in your previous job, you were the main person presenting. How are you going to adapt to that situation? You have to adapt. You have to be the person taking those notes and not complain about it, and be thankful that you have the opportunity to sit in a room like a fly on the wall when the minister and the president of World Bank are speaking. So these are things which will make your career, because today if you're patient and you allow that moment to pass and you take that as a learning experience, then tomorrow you will be the one with the seat on the table. So that patience and how you conduct yourself and remaining satisfied with your job and not complaining and not going on and on, no, 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 this is not right, that is not going to work in an international organization. You have to be very, very professional, and your soft skills take you much further ahead than your technical skills. I know of a lot of people who are my colleagues who are not even 50% as good at their writing or their presentation skills or their Excel, and yet they have received some of the biggest promotions because the client likes them, the government likes them, or the boss likes them in the headquarters. And that just, I mean, it's not fair, but it is important. The second most important technical skill is writing skills. In international organizations, you will typically in a day be writing 7 to 8 documents. These can be short documents. They will be briefs, like policy briefs. They will be, notes. They will be meeting notes. They will be, or they could be longer documents like reports, loan documents. So there'll be a whole barrage of documents that you will be writing. So now, if you have to do this much writing, then the most important skill that you need is how to write. So I just want to give you all one statistic, and many of you have worked with me, so I think you will know this. I have hired 84 interns at Nikore Associates in the last, I would say, 1.5 years. And I can count on my fingertips that there are about maybe three writers out of those 85 whose drafts I do not change by more than uh, 60%. So most of the drafts that I get, in short, I rewrite them completely from my team. And it is just in the case of three individuals that I don't fully rewrite them. I just rewrite some sections, and that's it. Otherwise, I mostly rewrite everything I get. The typical errors that I notice in writing skills, the first is that there's no structure. The second is that the grammatical expression is completely incorrect and English is terrible. And the third is that I find that there isn't sufficient research. So, something is being written just to be like a filler line, but it's actually not saying anything. There's no real message that goes with it. So, I really think that everybody needs to improve on their writing skills if they want to work in international organizations. And the third and most important skill, I mean, even writing is very, very important. I would put it as like the most, soft skills writing. And then the third one is management. You need to be able to manage different projects at the same time, and be very, very organized, because there will be times when you will be asked to manage a consulting firm. There will be time when you will be asked to manage a team. You will be asked to manage a project and its entire implementation. So when you are entering, even at entry level in international organizations, there's a lot of management work involved because of the nature of the work. So that's another reason why they don't hire rank inexperienced people. They hire people who have management skills. That's very important as well. So in your first 5 to 7 years, as I was saying, that you work, you need to work on these three skills. That is your soft skills, your writing skills, and your management skills. So, on that note, I'm going to invite Shayer and Tanya, who are joining us here from CollegeLab, which is actually a mentoring firm and an education policy firm also, and talk about writing skills specifically, because I feel that this is the biggest weakness, as I just pointed out, in the cohort of people that I've hired who are typically from very very good colleges and who are typically very highly educationally qualified. So with that, I will hand over for the next 15-20 minutes to College Lab and to Shayer to lead that part, and also to Tanya to talk us through some of the basics of research writing. So, oh, it's great to see, and also I'm seeing some of the chats just before at the end of the day. So we're seeing that Bit2, I mean, is going to shift us now, and we're seeing that a lot of questions are already coming in. So, guys, we're going to have Soham collate the questions, and we're not running polls on this because we've already run polls before. See, I see the internship questions at ADB are already starting. I'm very amused with this. Okay, I will. I also see questions on research and internship opportunities at Nikore Associates. Is it possible for non-Indians to get this? Yes, absolutely. We don't have any policy to not hire just Indians. So we will do that. And Soham, yes, you can revoke my control now, so we can hand over to College Lab to talk us through research writing, because that's the one skill that I really want to highlight today.
I would just like to clarify to all of the audience that all questions will be answered at the end of the session. Uh, Transferring over to College Lab.
Hi everybody, I'm just going to begin my screen share for just a second. Right, hi. I'm Shahid. I work with CollegeLab. As Mitali was talking about, we're a mentoring firm that deals with skill building and looking at specific areas of improvement that relate to various supplementary education roles. Today, I'm here to talk to you about a course that we're running, which is an introduction to research paper writing. Before I begin, I'd like to just briefly introduce myself. As an individual, I have worked with several policy organizations right from college. I worked with the United Nations Development Program here in India, and I've also worked with Reuters, the global desk at New York, and the specific Reuters agencies and AFP in India. So I do have a lot of in depth insight into the actual process of research, and I will be talking you through some of the specific applications of research papers in scenarios where normally you would not associate research with the thought process that goes into it. So let's just get begin with the presentation. So I'll be covering five major talking points. I will be inviting Tanya, who is our mentor for this program, to talk specifically about RW101, which is the name of the course. But to begin, I'd like to discuss the idea of academic writing. Now, as most of you are aware, academic writing is a different breed of writing than what is usually taught in the Indian education system and overall in school and even in undergrad. The idea here that is very, very important to highlight is within academic writing, one of the major focuses that differentiate itself from creative and technical writing, which are usually what you learn in the various national boards in India as well as in international systems like the GCSE or the IB, is academic writing has certain very, very direct parameters, both structural, format, and language wise, that are unique to itself. Now, that means that whenever we want to write academically for whatever purpose, whether it's public policy, market research, we're writing a patent, and so on and so forth, each of these has a very distinct system that you need to be familiar with and an associated argot. Now, this word is an important one. Argot means the specific vocabulary of a group that is relevant to the functions of the group. most international policy organizations, as Mitali was talking about, are highly bureaucratic and specialized, have a very, very finite target. So whether it's the United Nations, whether it's the European Union's various agencies, every such organization will have a set of vocabulary as well as writing parameters. And please understand, I'm not just talking about format styles. So this is not just about whether it's MLA format, APA format, blah blah blah. Almost every organization has their in-house style of academic writing, but some elements of academic writing remain consistent throughout, as it is its own genre of writing and therefore has its own repertoire of writing skills that we cover in RW101. Now, why was RW101 created? So here I'd like to talk about CollegeLab overall. So we are an admissions counseling firm and also a supplementary education firm that deals with the skill building space. So we recognize when we started this firm that there is a large section of education that is either absent or mitigated within the Indian education system and also to an extent in other education formats. Now, specifically talking about academic writing, having studied both in the US education system and the French education system slightly, as well as then transitioning to an Indian board. I did my 12th grade at CBSE. I can very well vouch for the fact that academic writing is not a major focus in the Indian education system. More importantly, even at the university level, having gone through university here in India at the largest public at Delhi University and a very prestigious institution, again, throughout the bachelor's and master's, the focus on academic writing has been minimal. In fact, the writing that we do in college here in India is mostly technical writing, which deals with only one or two aspects of actual research. And usually those aspects are limited until the master's level to a summarizing or a juxtaposing or paraphrasing role. Now, this means, and this is something we have data and we have tracked, a lot of the Indian students, especially academically brilliant students with spotless records, with glowing extracurricular activities, they're great debaters, they're involved in environmental science work, so on and so forth, really struggle when they go to a US environment or to a UK environment because of this expectation of a basic level and understanding of how research works. Unfortunately, when you transition in to a academic environment or even a professional environment abroad, nobody is going to take the time to sit down with you and give you the skills you need to perform in that task. And I think Tanya will talk about this more specifically in her journey. But one of the more important things you must understand is that there it's an expectation. It is something that you should already possess. It's not something that the college is looking to provide or furnish. Yes, there are colleges in the world that have academic writing courses in their bachelor's or master's, but those are a highly technical and specialized. For example, if you're looking at doing an international relations course, a lot of international relations courses nowadays especially come with a legal component where you will be studying in one semester at least a basic core course on international law, whether it's civil law, humanitarian law, etc., etc. You will there learn legal writing, but again, it's not academic writing, it's specialized to the format of law and jurisprudence. So you will never really be able to catch up until you devote the time yourself to get your head in the game and to perform. Now, there's a very big misconception that academic writing is only relevant to the classroom environment and to academia. And I can understand why this misconception came about because, in general, when we talk about the idea of research, very few people probably understand the scope of the term and how it is deployed in an actual professional environment. So, I'm going to talk about my experience here and walk you through some of the things that I have faced and I am aware of. So, one of the major things that you have in terms of where research is used, and Vitali was just talking about it, is in public policy and by extension, international law and development. So, one of the things that you must understand is that usually, whenever we look at what is the basic core function of an organization, usually in these organizations, because of the hierarchical and sort of segmented nature, there are only a very few people that actually have the ability or the, let's say, power to present at organizations. In my case, I worked on a presentation with Nikki Haley when she was still the permanent representative of the United States to the United Nations. So you will be surprised that in the US delegation, there are probably, if I'm now, I believe the current number is over 217 people. But out of those 217 people, only four are allowed to actually enter the plenary of the UN building. Everybody else is based in New York, but only provides supplementary research to these four individuals. And in many cases, this is also true for law. A lot of law firms have purely research roles and so on and so forth, so that you can look at developing answers to that. But it's not just public policy and law. Today, most corporates, and this is a shift we've been seeing for the last maybe 5 6 years with the development of software platforms and the maturity of SAP ERP platforms and big data analysis like Hadoop and Platfora, that both market analysis and business research, whether it's corporate intelligence, whether it's product design, have all shifted to research paper writing. In fact, a lot of the pioneers or the top companies in the world in almost every space, whether it's Cisco, whether it's Google, Amazon, Facebook, have extensive research and development wings that only produce patents. And those are the people that are filing reports on technologies, on innovative supply chain management, so on and so forth, that get patented in the US or wherever their local market is. Now, one interesting thing I thought I'd share with you, because this is something again where typically research is not considered bread and butter. So recently, Nvidia, which is a graphics card major, it's one of the largest graphics card companies in the world. I think 1 or 2 days ago, correct me if I'm wrong, launched its latest flagship series of graphics cards for the consumer audience. Now, why is this important? Why am I bringing it up? Because if you look at the presentation that Nvidia gave, they spent a lot of time talking about how they had filed over 400 research papers on the technology that went behind the development of their new architecture. So the idea of research and work in research paper writing is even important roles in computer science, artificial intelligence, so on and so forth, that people do not generally associate with the same kind of research when we talk about research paper writing. Similarly, if you look at Apple and Samsung presentations for the last maybe 8 years or so, and especially since the environment has now become a major factor for both these companies, you will find that just before their products are launched in the market, there are huge environmental impact surveys and other such related research material that these companies produce. In fact, for the Apple transfer to India with this entire Make in India project, I was part of that particular project. You do have, for example, a huge amount of documentation that was filed with the MSME industries and the SEZ sort of filing in India. So this is a skill that is very much in demand in the job market today, in the growing knowledge economy transition that we have. So now I'm going to introduce Tanya Malik. She's our mentor, and I believe she can give you a more complete overview of this offering that we have and walk you through what exactly RW101 offers and brings to the table. So, Tanya, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Shayer, and thank you so much, Mitali, and everybody else at Nikore Associates for having us at College Lab over here. I hope you can hear me. Okay, I haven't received a message saying that I'm not audible. So that's great. My name is Tanya Malik. I'm currently based out of Bangalore. I've been working with College Lab for a few months now, as a mentor, educating students on how to conduct research writing. As a part of that, I'm taking the RW 101 and then proceeding to the RW 102 course. My background is fronts. I've been in the field of psychology and mental health for a few years now. I did my undergrad in that and then went on to do my master's in clinical psychology. My main focus has not been therapy, however, it has been a lot of research. I think the closest I can probably relate to the audience in terms of public policy is my background in SRHR, which is sexual reproductive health and rights. That was probably the last bit of research experience that or academic research that I was doing before I moved back to India. The research writing course is like Shara's, explained very well. The need for it is the reason why I'm really proud of this research writing course is the kind of focus that I'm able to provide the students. I typically try to keep them limited to 6 students or less. We have one-on-one. We have these group sessions once a week, about 2 hours long, and the main goal of it is to allow each student to really express their ideas, understand their fields that they are interested in. And I have a large, my courses have a lot of diversity. So it's not like a lot of the students are purely interested in, say, a course like economics or public policy or international relations. I've got students psychology, sociology, history, economics across the board. But the basics of academic writing, like Shire mentioned, stand true and then get built on as you go further down the line of your career. So the research writing course is structured typically. Shire, if you want to move to the next slide. The writing course is structured into 5 parts: how to read research, how to summarize and then critically analyze said research. Then we step into, okay, what am I personally interested in? What do I want to know? And aiming to end with what is the problem that I want to solve. I typically start with students understanding, okay, what is an abstract? How does an abstract work? How are academic papers or journal articles typically structured? Like Mitali discussed as a need for her interns, the structure of your paper, the structure of any paper, of any reading is extremely important. And the story that you're telling goes hand in hand with that. So that's the focus that I really keep to for the first and the second session. Aside from the basics of, okay, understanding how to cite things, understanding what is the outline of your paper, understanding, okay, how much are you referencing other papers, what kind of other bodies of literature are you referencing, and also how to think laterally and not just be limited to your interest and what you think is true, but to enter things with with an open mind, to be able to fully incorporate, okay, what exactly is the literature that is out there saying, how does that tie into my research question. And by reading a lot of other papers and understanding how to do annotated bibliographies, for example, how to summarize large bodies of text into 500 words that may not be entirely what the authors have summarized themselves, and then again understanding, okay, how is this paper that I'm reading relevant to the material that I want to create. So the part of the RW 101 course, the final output would be a paper which is roughly a 4,000 word paper, a 3,000 word literature review, and then an additional 1,000 words of me being able to hear your voice. The literature review is exceptionally important and ends up creating the larger basis of this particular paper. The reason why the RW 101 course stands the way it is, which is only having 25% of your own voice really coming in and your own analysis coming in, is because the skills of being able to understand and analyze other people's voices is just a lot more important before you can generate your own voice and what to say and are able to say it correctly and accurately. So the literature review students, I have some of my current students, one of them is interested in economics. They're looking at how decriminalization of sex work would improve or not improve the economy, and he's taking a really interesting stance and looking at a diverse range of topics, so both not just economics, but also incorporating a lot of society, incorporating other models, doing a lot of comparison with other countries. I've got some other students there's another student who's really interested in history, and she's looking at Vlad the Impaler and his impact on pop culture and media today. So we go in a lot of different directions. The main aim, the main structure is, no matter what you are interested in, I'm here to hone your interest. and I'm here to make sure that you are able to generate a paper that can stand its test of criticism, of being peer reviewed. And then the ultimate goal will also be to generate, or practice those soft skills of being able to present, speak in front of a group, which we have a sort of conference style setup for our last day of the course, where we likely invite a whole bunch of people, so that the students can also field questions, or have to accept and deal with criticisms of their work, and also understand their work to a much deeper level, that it's not just okay, it's just you're saying something, reading something, saying something, writing it, presenting it, and moving on, that you're really associating yourself with the language, with the literature, with the material, and with your final output a lot more. Shayer, if you'd like to move on. Okay, so the goals of, or the impact of this course, and understanding how to write research and understanding how to write academic research, is fourfold: gain clarity, expand your skill sets, adds credibility, and give shapes to your vision. Gives gain clarity is okay. You may, as a high school student or a young college student, may have an idea of, okay, this is the general field that I'm interested in. There was an interesting question that came up at a lecture I heard, or a TED talk I heard, but I just want to know more about this, and I'm not entirely sure where I want to go. I have an idea of things that may be restrictive, things that may be barriers, things that may also allow things, but I just want to learn a lot more about the particular thing that I'm interested in, the particular topic I'm interested in. So the whole point of this course is to allow you not to be stuck to what your high school syllabus or your college syllabus is saying, and not have you mandatorily follow that prescribed topic, for you to be able to understand, explore, elaborate on the kind of questions that you are interested in, that you seek. That then ties in the process of writing a research paper and conducting your literature review, ends up having a lot of time management, and having you be able to communicate your points a lot better, communication both orally as well as in your written work. Time management is very, very important, because then it ties into, okay, how easily can you manage this time with your exams coming up, or other assignments as part of your high school or college, by having strict but often flexible guidelines, because one understands the priority that this flows, but because this, we're also trying to replicate a real world situation where you will eventually have absolute hard deadlines for at least your final product. So you will have a lot of support, it will be very, very guided, but the main aim is that, okay, that if it's an 8-week course, then certain things are due certain days, things start slowly and then they pick up, with the aim of you being able to finally have a decent amount of time and a lot of support, or either over the phone or through open office hours that I conduct, for you to be able to narrow down on the kind of questions you have, figure out your outline, what are the kind of things you want to talk about. If you have a difficulty in understanding some of the literature papers that you've come up, or even if halfway through you've decided that, okay, maybe this isn't the correct topic for me, understanding, okay, what is the stuff that I have already learned, what are the things that I'm still interested in, and then continuing to mold that. The reason we're also here today associating with Nikore Associates is because of the need Mitali mentioned of a lot of young public policy organizations requiring students and interns to already have the skills of writing papers. It does take a lot of stress and drains organizations that students will be interning in when they're getting trained. And also from a student's perspective, the amount of time, suppose they're doing a 2-month internship, if a month goes in just understanding how to produce quality work, then how much are you really learning and exploring your skills, and just gaining a lot of input if most of your time is going in training. So if you're already able to come in with your skills of academic writing, if you have a decent idea about the kind of populations you're interested in, about the demographics you're interested in, of the problems that you want to solve, that just means that when you come in, you will have an advantage over the other interns, over the other entry-level employees, over the other consultants, when you are finally going and looking for jobs or looking for research opportunities at university, or whatever path you do go on. So it isn't just Nikore Associates that would end up requiring students and requiring interns to already be proficient in academic writings, but a lot of other related companies like Shayer talked about, that have opportunities for research or have opportunities for presenting white papers or creating reports. These academic writing skills will play a significant hand in your success and your progress in those organizations. Finally, how RW1 gives shape to your vision. It is a structured entry point into the world of research and writing. By gaining a better sense of where you stand, what you want to do, and how to go about doing it, you are able to attain your goal a lot sooner. Um, and thus, RW1 would allow you to unlock the potential and optimize your chance of success. Shayer, if you want to proceed. Well, thank you for being with us today. Thank you so much, Nikore Associates and Mitali, for having us. Thank you so much, Soham, for conducting and hosting this. Our website is over. Our email ID is over there. If it's not visible, it's shayer at collegelab.in. That's Shayer's email ID, and he'll be happy to take this conversation further. Soham, it's back to you.
So thank you so much to CollegeLab for this presentation as well, because I think the most important skill, as I pointed out, for international organizations is to be able to write well. And great. So I'm back on. So thank you again to CollegeLab for this presentation, and also for all the technical assistance that they're giving us today in hosting this session. I think it's been very smooth so far. So with that, I will move to some of the questions that all of you have been putting in, and also guys, keep the questions coming, because we have about half an hour more in which we can go through the questions. And this is, I would have of course preferred to do this in person, and have a more interactive session. But since it's we are bound by these limitations, please keep the questions coming, and I'd really love to answer many of the questions. So the first set of questions really that we've been seeing are about what is a good opportunity for people who have already done. I think that's a very interesting question that just came in. That what about people who have actually finished their masters in public policy in India? How do we go about it? Because one of the points that I made earlier in the presentation is that there is a strict preference for people who have studied abroad. So I think the people who've studied public policy in India, it's not as though there are no opportunities. I think for the next 4 or 5 years, it's important that you work and get experience on ground. Work with organizations like JPAL. You can work with the IFMR, which is based in Chennai, so you can apply there. You can work with organizations. Like NGOs, you can work with organizations in the private sector. I really recommend working at some of the consulting firms, because a lot of the consulting firms like PwC, EY, Dalberg, there are a number of these consulting firms which actually do a lot of work in the development space, and they also work very closely with international organizations, because we contract out a lot of the assignments to the consulting firms, and especially the studies. So that's a great way to begin. And they have specialized practices called the governance practices, or they have social sector practices, they have practices on infrastructure. So I really recommend working in these consulting firms to get a good corporate sector experience. Or you can work in community organizations and NGOs to get experience. And after that, you can always consider doing instead of a master's in public policy, a master's in public administration from abroad. A good MPA. 7-8 years into your career, it's not a bad option. Actually, to be very honest with everybody here, even I am considering doing an MPA at some point, as I get the time. And but of course I will wait for COVID to settle down, because I can, I have the flexibility to do that. It's a degree which is like an optional degree. So definitely I suggest that people can start working in the private sector and then take it from there. Another option is to do online degrees from abroad. There are a number of executive programs which Harvard Kennedy School has started, and with 5 years of experience under your belt, you can always apply to those programs and do them online. So there's a lot of ways in which you can sort of get good quality education now. You don't necessarily have to go to those universities. Then another very interesting question is about opportunities for people who completed their masters in economics, and specifically ADB YPP. Okay. So let me bust some myths about the YPP, because that's something that people think is actually for young people. Let me tell you that this is actually not for young people, it's for people who are in their 30s. So it's still you turn 32. So the typical age in which you get picked for a YPP program is between the ages of 29 and 32. That's the actual best shot. And a YPP program, and I know this because I have been interviewed by the World Bank YPP twice and have not actually got the job, but I've actually cleared all the rounds of the interview of the World Bank YPP. And the only reason I did not finally get the job is because of country quotas. At the end of the day, only 4 people get selected from India every year in the World Bank YPP. And even once you've cleared all the interviews, you know that you are exceptional because you're at that level, you've cleared it. 10,000 people have applied. From that, you're one of the maybe 20 or 30 Indians who got in. The final 4 have to meet certain criteria. I mean, firstly, out of those 4, 3 will be women. So that was something which was in my favor. But then apart from that, again, 3 out of 4 have to be PhDs, because the World Bank YPP is one of those programs which does require a PhD. They have very strict rules about YPPs being PhDs. And the other thing is that the World Bank YPP is the kind of program which also requires you to have very, very strict sector experience. So, in my case, one of the reasons I feel that I got picked in the final YPP list, even though I cleared all the interviews, is because I have multi sector experience. I don't have experience of 8 years or 9 years in just, say, transport, or in just gender, or in just MSME. I have experience of 2 to 3 years in each of these sectors. So, and they look for pure, like in the YPP, they look for people who have pure experience in one sector. And that's a problem of the YPP and not my experience. And that's what I believe, because I believe that the future is multi-sector. The future will be of programs where people who have experience in regional and local development will be much more in demand than people who have just experience in a single sector. So I really suggest that more people should become generalists, and more people should work in a host of sectors before they decide to specialize in one sector, especially at this age, because you can't dictate your career and your career moves as per one program, that's the YPP, especially when you know that the intake rate is so low that every year 10,000 people apply. In the end, 20 people get selected. Out of that, 4 will be Indians. 4 seats may say, that 3 will be for women, 3 will be for PhDs. And there is certain amount of, so it's not always going to be on just there is an element of who which figures in that. So there is an element of networking, and there is an element of government endorsement as well on who finally gets those positions. So in my view, YPP is something that should be, yes, please aspire and please apply and please go through the process. Even going through the recruitment process of the YPP is a big learning experience. But at the end of the day, it's also important to uh, go through and just be sure that this is what you want. Then other important questions that have come up today could I share some more information about internships at private organizations like Bill and Melinda Gates, Chai, etc. I think the beauty of international organizations is that while they have to advertise all positions, whether it's internships or consultancies or staff positions, how the recruitment decisions of those positions are made is very different from what meets the eye. I have been, told that please start working and we'll advertise your position next week, and then we will select you. But you start working. So you guys should not think that, oh, I'm going to get this internship because I applied for it. It's probably already been given to somebody. Same with a consultancy. I'm not breaking your bubble, but that's sort of how it is. So that's why in international development and public policy, working with somebody who is in the system as their intern for some time can help you understand the system better, and then you can sort of network more, especially with the staff who are in those organizations, and ask them to create a position for you. That is a short way of getting in. But just applying to open positions, there's a, I would say there's a 7 to 10% chance that you'll get a call back. So while you should, and then this is another thing which I've seen happening, that even when, say for example, I'm already selected for a position, they know that they're advertising my position, they get good CVs, when it's my position. So that person may not actually get that position for, which was advertised, but they might get a call back from the recruitment team at some point saying, actually, you had applied for this position, we like your CV, let's talk. And then you can speak to them, and if they like you, and then in a few months maybe some new project will come up, and then they will consider your CV. So you should always apply, but always with a pinch of salt, that I may not hear back, and most probably I'm not going to hear back. 90% I'm not hearing back, when I'm applying for an open position. The best way to get in is to network. And by networking, what do I mean? Now this is very important. Networking means that you should write to people on LinkedIn when you think that you have some skills and experience to contribute to their team. You should participate in webinars, you should participate in interactions, ask questions, interesting questions. You should circulate your articles, you should write in on Medium, on LinkedIn, these kind of public forums. Write your views, write your writing is very important, because if you're writing in the public domain, then they can see your writing skills, right? So it already tells them that how to express yourself. So write in public forums and write about what you believe, and that will help you in showcasing yourself. Build your CV build an interactive CV, build a PPT CV, build a CV which is like an Elon Musk, that one page graphic CV, so that people get interested that you have a certain other skills. So it's very important to keep on working on your own skills, and then as you're doing training programs, as you're doing courses, you will meet people, and then more opportunities will come from there. So this is very important. Then okay, someone has asked about my work and experience in Africa and how I got that opportunity. So it was actually by chance that I got that opportunity. I was studying at the LSE, and I came back to India just after finishing for a summer break, and I then went to New York, and I was working at the UN for an internship, and which then converted into a consulting opportunity because they liked my work. As I mentioned, if they don't like that first chance that you get, that first internship, just put your 110% into it, otherwise you will get knocked out. So that's the most important thing, and that's why you must always keep skilling yourself and be prepared. And once I was finishing my consultancy at the UN, they wanted to renew it, but I didn't, because I was very bored with the work. It was entirely desk work, and I wanted to be on the field. So a friend of mine got in touch and mentioned that a new organization was opening in India in economic consulting. So I said, great, I'm going to join. And they said, but it's a complete startup and it's an African startup. And they, I don't know what the position will be. It's a new office. I said, no problem, let me take a risk. So it was the beginning of my career and I took a risk. It was a small firm. The firm shut down actually in 6 months. And but they offered me a position in Africa because they liked my work. Again, it is about performance. Opportunities will come your way. You guys are all in great colleges studying, and you're all obviously very motivated to work on yourselves, and you're looking for opportunities, so you will get in. But sustaining those opportunities is very important. So again, they liked my work. The most important thing, the feedback that I got was that my writing was very good, because again, in that economic consulting firm there were a number of reports that we had to prepare for our clients, which literally I used to write on my own without much guidance. So they said, yeah, we want to create a position for you in Johannesburg. And they sponsored my visa and I went there and I started working there. I was working with the government of South Africa for some time, then I was working with DFID. And so that's sort of how it happened. So it was a very small niche consulting firm, no one had heard of it. I just took a chance and it worked out. So my point is that don't go for only brand names, go for people who can teach you things. I really felt that all of my bosses at these different organizations, when I interviewed, even when you're interviewing, you'll get a sense when you're sitting with the interviewer that is this person actually intelligent and can teach me something. then I, then it's okay to spend a year or year and a half. Another very important thing at these internships and experiences, and though it's not in the questions, is that I've seen that a lot of people become very impatient in just a month or 2 months of doing an internship, and they feel that they should get leadership roles, positions, etc. Especially in larger organizations, that is an unrealistic expectation. It's extremely important to keep on improving your work quality and to take feedback and ask for feedback from your managers. Okay, it's been a month or 2 months since I've been working here. What do you like about my work? What do you not like about my work? In the first 5 to 7 years of your career, your role is always going to be to produce deliverables. It's only after the first 5 7 years that you will be asked to bring in new projects or you'll be asked to do critical thinking. But in the first 5 years, it's really about delivering. And if you're not delivering, then you're not going to be retained and taken to a level where your critical thinking can be valued. So, the first 5 years are really to be a sponge and absorb. So and also deliver the documents and the different deliverables that are required from you to your boss, and seek feedback. So that's very important. Another question which has come is, would a bachelor's in political science already set you back if you'd like to pursue public policy? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Definitely. And I mean, there are different questions, different forms of this question which have come up, that do you necessarily have to be an econ graduate to pursue a career in public policy? No, you absolutely don't. They have a preference for economics because economics students have a math background, and these days there are a lot of quantitative public policy studies which are being done by econ students. But there is a whole array of public policy areas which are very very qualitative and not very quantitative. So I don't think that a sociology degree or a pol science degree sets you back when you're doing public policy. There is just a little bit of a preference for the econ students or graduates because of the math skills that they have. So one thing that you can do is that if you're not an econ student, if you're a political science student or a policy student at undergrad level, or a sociology student, you can always pursue some kind of a statistics skill training program. You can always go on edX or Coursera and do some introductory statistics programs, not econometrics, because for that you need to know economics, but you can do basic statistics, so that you're signaling to the recruiter or to the graduate school that you are working on your quant skills as well. It's not just qualitative. So you're understanding what basic statistics is, mean, median, etc., and that you can do charts and you're not afraid of numbers. Now, the technical skills that you need to develop, coding, Excel, coding, no. I mean, the international development is still a few decades away from when we need coding skills. Excel, yes. We do a lot of modeling in international development because we have to, especially in infrastructure, because we have to understand the costs and benefits of an investment project. So basic, economic model building, financial model building is required. So on that, you can again take up some skill training courses. But technical skills don't just mean coding and Excel. Writing is a very important technical skill for international development. So is making presentations. And these days, again, presentations don't just have to be a PPT with few bullet points. There are so many presentation softwares now. There are so many, there's Canva, for example. A lot of people are using Canva for making PPTs. There's Prezi, and presentations have become very dynamic. And I also feel that going forward, there will be an expectation that one of the key skills that they look for, especially in young people, is design skills. Because it isn't just about writing a report, it's also about presenting it. And at Nikore Associates, the one thing that we've been working on a lot is, fine, we've done a blog or we've done a research paper or we've done even a book, which I wrote. But now, how do we communicate this content to people? Because they are not going to read large reports. So while large reports have to be written because those are procedural, summaries also have to be made alongside, and they have to be communicated in a visual fashion. So infographics and making designs of and beautiful presentations. There was this one boss of mine at World Bank who once told me, Mitali, your presentation, I love it, but it needs to be more professional. And I just, for I think half a day, I just sat and wondered. Manvika and I were both working on it. She's also online today, so I'm mentioning her. And we said, what does it really mean to make a presentation more professional? We don't know. But yeah, so what we actually did, we corrected the formatting of that presentation. We noticed that in one or two slides, the fonts were actually different. The font sizing was not uniform. So we actually did that. And she said, you got it. So even the smallest of things make a lot of difference in international development. And as Tanya was mentioning, referencing, it's an extremely important skill because at the end of the day, these documents which you create in international organizations, they are institutional documents, and the loans and the programs that are sort of given by these organizations, that are done by these organizations, last for more than 8 years, 10 years, sometimes even 15 years. And if documents are not referenced properly, then after 10 years, if you open a document that was prepared in, say, 2005, if I open a loan document of 2005 and I want to refer to the base study that was used to prepare the program design, and that link doesn't work, or if that link, or if there is no reference, then in my mind there's already a doubt, because I have to evaluate the impact of that project, or maybe I have to create a part two of that project 10 years later, and then I'm thinking, is this the right project to create a part two of? Even though it might be a brilliant project, but it doesn't have a reference, it already weakens my case to create part two. So that's why actually formatting, referencing, all of these seemingly unimportant skills are actually paramount in international development. So a ton of organizations don't want to give a shot to straight up undergrads. What do we target to gain work experience before pursuing masters? So the point is, this is a great question, and this is exactly what we are discussing today. On ground field experience should be the focus. I mean, COVID aside, right now we are in a very strange situation, but in a normal situation, when you can go on the field, you must go on the field. any NGO, if it gives you a 1 year fellowship to go on ground and work in rural areas or work in tier one cities or work at the site of a common effluent treatment plant, or if allows you to work on the design of a highway or work in the project management unit in a government office, go for it. Anything that allows you to be close to the action and sitting on ground, go for it. Unless you gain that experience early on in your career, throughout your career you'll remain a paper pusher. It's only when you can speak to the ground experience that you can understand what is going on with people. Otherwise it's a very you'll always have a very desk and academic perspective, which is not sufficient for international development. If you are trying to make policy for someone, you have to understand how they think. Then another question is, what would be the appropriate way to approach someone personally through LinkedIn? I think it's very important to approach someone personally through LinkedIn after you have attended, say, maybe a webinar that that person recently did, and write in reference to that that, oh, you were actually at this webinar. I heard your, remarks. They were extremely interesting, and there is an overlap between the work you're doing and my interest areas, and I have demonstrated that through this particular example. Say for example, when I was applying for my assignment for the World Bank recently, which I got last year, I wrote to somebody very senior at the bank because I was going to be at Washington for a conference which the World Bank was hosting. And I said, yes, I've been selected as a young professional to be at this conference. I'm going to be at the bank for 4 days. And by the way, I also work on transport sector. And I've done around 3 years of project work in the railways sector and in road sector, while I was employed with PwC. And aside from that, I also work with ADB at the moment. So would love to seek a meeting with you to discuss potential opportunities with the bank. So, it already made the case in not more than 5-7 lines that I have the relevant experience to contribute to his team. And also that it would be very convenient for me to meet him or speak to him because actually I happen to be at the World Bank itself. So, you must write and approach people in such a manner that, it's not just random, but actually or for example, let's say that if I was doing a webinar tomorrow, I'm doing, say, for example, a webinar next week or with the Good Governance Lab. And say one of you happens to attend that, and you say, oh, actually, Mitali, you spoke about gender budgeting, and I'm very interested in gender budgeting. And actually, in my college project, I have done a research paper on gender budgeting. And this is an area which I'd like to research further. So then immediately I will write back to you and I'll be like, okay, great, you already know the basics of gender budgeting. I don't need to actually train you from scratch. So leverage your projects and research work that you're doing at college, outside of college, and build on that. So say for example, if anyone from Nikore Associates, say one of my managers, they apply for let's say for an MSME project, and somebody asks them, oh acha, what is your interest in MSME sector? So they can say, actually I was working at Nikore Associates and we did a research paper on the challenges of MSME sector during COVID, and it really made me interested because I learned that during COVID, actually MSMEs were facing a problem of delayed payments. When you talk in these tones, you're showing that you understand a topic and you're interested in pursuing that topic further because you have experience in that topic. So you may not have experience in years, but you have experience in a particular subject matter or in a particular area which you have pursued somewhere, with as an intern or somewhere as a researcher, or even in your college as a topic. It may even be that you participated in a debate or in a model UN session, and that interested you. You say that, oh, actually I went for an MUN and there I was participating in a simulation of the UNDP, and they talked about feminization of poverty, and I think that's a great area that I'd like to build on further. And I did 3-4 weeks of research to build my position paper for that. So, it could be anything, but it has to be something that you did. Uh, okay. Then another question that is there is that ADB, one of the first questions actually, is that ADB has opened up for internships. Yes, ADB always is looking for interns, so is World Bank. How do we submit the best possible application? What do they look for? They look for people. See, at the end of the day, they get a lot of applications. So think about it. You will apply online and compete with some of the best people in the world. Columbia, Harvard, Yale, they have specialized programs on international development, and Leak One, ADB specifically hires a lot from Leak One, LSE, IDS Sussex, so ADB and World Bank, the first thing that they look for is a brand name in terms of your master's or postmaster's degree. They unfortunately do. And unless you can produce that brand name, the internships which they advertise, it's difficult to get those because those are controlled from headquarters and those are based at headquarters to assist international staff. National offices of ADB and World Bank don't hire interns. So it's very difficult to get in. In World Bank, for example, it's very easy to get an internship if you are a student at George Washington University, which is right in the same city as World Bank, that's Washington. In the UN, it's very easy to get an internship if you're at Columbia because New York, you're in the same vicinity. ADB hires, as I said, a lot from Leak One because that's in Singapore and their office is in Manila, and there's a connection between. So there's a connection that every school has. Some of these schools with great public policy programs they have with multilateral organizations. Yale has an international development program which has a very strong connection with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So every school and its alumni network actually is the sort of key to getting internships in international organizations. So in terms of your application, of course, it must be written well, it must be structured well, it must clearly demonstrate the field work you've done, the research work you've done, and the impact of your work. That is very important. So you can keep on describing what you did, but after you did it, what happened? It's equally important to describe that. So in your applications, you must bring that out, and you must be, applications must be very succinct. You shouldn't just go on and on. You should actually write what you think showcases the impact of your work in the best light. So don't just go on writing and writing, but of course, do remember that a lot of these international organizations already have great connections with some of the bigger schools on this. So one question from my own team, from Anushka. Are fellowships or job opportunities with prospective employers like think tanks or research organizations or NGOs a better opportunity for a graduate student? Here, I think by graduate, you mean undergraduate. So, yes, I really think so. I mean, if you get an internship with an international organization, that's great because that's gonna, if you land that, brilliant. But if you don't, it doesn't mean that there are no other opportunities in international development. And I really think that opportunities with think tanks and research organizations and NGOs are all good. Especially when it comes to think tanks, you can really build your research skills if you go to a good think tank. But India doesn't have that many good think tanks. To be fair, you have ORF, and we all know that ORF. I mean, the problem with think tanks is that many of them are funded by, vested interests. So we know that ORF is funded by Reliance, and Reliance, is a firm which has a certain ideology and a certain agenda. So at the end of the day, the research that comes out of ORF is going to be for a particular, in a particular tone. We can already see that the kind of research that they do on China, for example, it's taking a particular tone. So it's very important that if you're going for a think tank or an NGO, it should be, independent. And if even if you're going for it regardless of its political leanings, just be aware of the political leanings, don't internalize them, because it's important to be as independent as possible. So that's the only caveat to working with a think tank in India, that many of them are funded by large corporates and or by politically connected entities. Now, does public policy have to be about research, or could someone be more inclined towards live on ground action, towards live on ground action, or is that a hint that you probably shouldn't go into PPE? Yes, I do think that if you are not comfortable with being on ground for more than 5 days at a stretch, so if you think that okay, 2 weeks on ground is too hectic, then you're probably not cut out for public policy. I've had projects in which I've stayed. I mean, again, I haven't lived in discomfort. It's not like I've been living in tents or in villages without a proper bathroom. That's not how I've lived. I have lived in decent, clean places, but they're not my home. I don't come back home every day. I never used to. It's only with COVID that I've been at home. But otherwise, my schedule used to be traveling for maybe 4 days a week, either in one city or the other. And I've done many weeks where it's been a flight to Lucknow in the morning, hop over to Varanasi, hop over to Calcutta, hop over to Mumbai, to Chennai. So there was a lot of travel that used to be there in my work, which isn't possible anymore. And but I also think that post COVID, there will be a mix of both digital and physical work that will come up. But I really think that for young people who are starting their careers, it's important to go and work in the area where your project is. So it is important to get an appreciation. For us, if we've spent maybe 2 to 3 years on the field, we know what is, we typically know, acha, okay, aise ho raha hoga. And then we have some field people, so we'll ask them ki acha kya ho raha hai on the field, are they sort of is this person fighting with that person, or is this institution not getting along with that one? And typically you tend to receive a confirmation from your field team to say, actually ma'am, that's right, that's exactly what's going on, or actually ma'am, you're wrong, this isn't what's going on, this is going on. And then as a senior person, you have the option of flying in when you want to see the field situation. But for juniors and people who are starting their careers, it's important to get that opportunity to be on the field, also to prove that you can manage the client. Because when you're the one who's based in the field, then the client only sees you. Like the government sees you. If you're the representative of say a consulting firm in a PMU, they see you. They don't see your boss or boss's boss. They see you and they only talk to you, and you are the one who gets a chance to develop the rapport with the government agency that you're working with, or with you know with the on ground sort of people. So it's or with the community. So you get to build those skills of stakeholder consultations, and of working on ground. So that is very important at the beginning of your career, because if you can do that, then you know how to extract information and bring insights to your team which no one else can. So I really do think that. So do you think a master's in public policy is ideal for working in development consulting? These firms are usually dominated by MBAs. See, this is what I don't get about these firms. So I met the founder of Dalberg when I used to live in South Africa, because he was friends with my boss, and actually started his company from a room when both of them were roommates. And neither of them has an MBA. They both have masters in economics. So why Alberg has become a firm, or Britspan has become a firm, or FHG has become a firm which favors MBAs over people with an MPP or a master's in econ, I can't understand it. And that is also why firms like Dalberg are not doing well in India, but they do much better in markets like Latin America or Africa, is because in India there is a certain cap. So there's also an economics of when you hire a firm. At the end of the day, the people who are paying the most in the market for consulting services of of international development consulting services is ADB and World Bank. So tomorrow, if I, on behalf of ADB, want to hire a firm, I will never hire Dalberg. I will never hire Bridgespan. I'll always hire either an EY or a PwC or a KPMG or a Deloitte. And that's for two reasons. A, Dalberg doesn't have the kind of size and scale that I need when I'm hiring a consulting firm. I will prefer to hire individual sector experts and maybe hire three sector experts rather than hiring a Dalberg, because the three sector experts will be directly reporting to me. Secondly, and if I need a firm, then I need a big team. Then I need 5 or 7 experts, and under each expert, I need 7, 8 people working, because it means that the assignment is really large. So, the firms like Bridgespan and Dalberg, they are definitely struggling because they haven't figured out their financial model properly. And I really think that in the next few years, their model will change. I'll give you an example. BCG recently started a social consulting practice. And I was interviewed for that practice a few years ago, and I was offered a job. I turned it down and instead started working with the World Bank. And the reason why that job didn't make sense is because while they were paying me a much higher than market salary at the time, the work that they were making me do was, it wasn't managerial. And I said, okay, here I am with 5 years of experience. Why would you not give me managerial work? I mean, you're a consulting firm. You need people to do that. He said, oh, you don't have an MBA. We only give this to MBAs. Today, BCG has priced itself out of the development consulting market. They have approached ADB time and again for several assignments, but they don't get hired because they charge too much, because they only hire MBAs, and MBAs are the highest costing resource for any consulting firm. So, the cost models of these consulting firms, especially post COVID, are going to go through an overhaul. And MBAs are not ideal for solving international development problems. They may be great if they have the field experience, or they've engaged with the community in some way, then it's great. But otherwise, there is no skill that an MBA brings to the table that a person with an MPP or a master's in econ doesn't bring, especially if that MBA is from India. If it's an international MBA, then of course they would have had several years of experience, and then that's a different model, and that's a different skill set. But you can't compare an Indian MBA from an IIM with a master's in econ or an MPP degree from outside. Those are, infinitely better skilled resources for any firm. So if the firms are not hiring them, it means that they are, narrow-minded. So don't work for those firms. And they will not survive in the market. You'll come to know as you keep working. Right. So I think we've gone through a lot of questions today. There's one more that I want to take. Would you recommend that a young professional starting out with a master's in public policy in hand should go for a second master's or further education in a specialized field after some years of experience? I think you have to sort of think about your education now as a continuum. You can't think कि अच्छा मैंने ये MPP कर लिया and now I'm sort of done with studying and I don't ever need to study again. You have to constantly build your skills. Just recently, I did a course on unlocking financing in emerging markets for infrastructure projects designed by the World Bank on edX. It was a 4-5 week course, and I did that with great enthusiasm. So the World Bank and the World Bank Learning Institute has started a number of courses on edX, which I recommend everyone should do. And also it is important to keep on learning, keep on building your technical skills, like do a writing course, as CollegeLab is offering one, for example, and or do a statistics course, to build your skills in that area, or do a course in project implementation, monitoring and evaluation. So pick up JPAL now has a number of courses, the JPAL MIT They have great courses on impact evaluation, which they've recently started post COVID. There's the MIT Micro Masters, which is very good. So there it's not as though you can't keep skilling yourself if you don't get a second master's. So it's not compulsory. See how your career develops after a few years of experience and working. And if you feel that you're hitting a gap, or you're hitting a block and you're not able to get say a better salary, or the promotion that you need, or you're not able to position yourself as an international consultant, then go for a second master's abroad, or some further education. But otherwise, keep doing these courses on the side to keep building your skills. So I think I'm being told on message that there's also a very important question on uh, there's also a very important question on fellowships with the government. Are they considered a good experience? I think so. I think that will also open your eyes to exactly how the government works. So I'll stop here, and then there are, I think, a few questions for College Lab, which maybe Shayer and Tanya, in case you want to, answer some of those questions, then you can please take it up. And the last question, which is about, I'll just quickly, while Soham does the transition, there's someone who's asking that is it necessary to have a master's in public policy to work in public policy? Absolutely not. I have a master's in economics, so it's not in public policy. So if you're in public policy, this is the work. It doesn't really matter what your degree is, and an MPhil in international relations is a very related subject, so you don't have to worry. So with that, Soham will request you to transfer for the remaining questions to Shayer and Tanya.
Right. Hi. I'm seeing a lot of questions on in general on basically the idea of the common skill set and how we can develop the writing skills without any kind of facilitation from our universities. So one thing that I think definitely you all can do is considering that mostly the Indian education system, as well as in general universities, don't directly offer opportunities for research. Thankfully, in the today's day and age, there are lots of these platforms like journals as well as other policy think tanks. Even, for example, one of the major things that I do want to talk about that all of you can directly work with and be a part of is the UN volunteers as part of the online volunteers program. So the UNOV, which is the United Nations Online Volunteer Corps, is open for anybody at any educational level from any educational background. And what it does and how it sort of like works is you have these themes which you can choose to work in depending on your subject of interest, and you can definitely join a policy group there. And there's a lot of research that is done by and often led by professors or other activists and other people that you can follow and contribute to, because not only is it a good profile building exercise, but it's also something that's really, really helpful for you to get a feel of how actual policy implementation works. And the UNOV is one of those very, very easy platforms to get associated with. But other than that, I feel like it's important to recognize, and that is also why we started RW101 as well, that the way to improve your writing skill or any skill really is to demonstrate it consistently in your day to day, everyday transactions. So, in that sense, the way you can go about it, and it is very, very easy to do now, is if you are in a subject that you're deeply interested in and you like certain areas or explorations, please go ahead and set up a blog or set up, for example, some form of a common platform for discussion, join a Reddit forum, stuff like that, because you will, through even those minor exchanges, gain the experience of, I won't say necessarily writing a full fledged research paper, but at least some aspect of writing. And again, like the reason that we came out with RW101 is primarily to supplement this gap and the understanding that yes, most universities don't really offer such particular courses. Other than that, I think I have answered most of the all of the questions that have come up in chat. So I don't really see any other specific questions as such. I would like to pass the baton on to Tanya if you want to add or you want to discuss anything else in particular. So Tanya, please, if you wish to cut in, please go ahead.
Thank you, Shayer. No, I think at this point you've covered a lot of what I would have said anyways. Mithali's made a great, absolutely great point of talking about why research is so important. I would like to point out that the opportunity to conduct your own research, to go out and collect your own primary data, either in the form of surveys or understanding if your thought of intervention works with a particular population in a demographic that you are interested in, that opportunity also exists under the College Lab Skills Labs team. Of course, the RW101 course would be a prerequisite for that, but that could also be a good opportunity in case you aren't getting internships, in case none of the internships that are available are matching your specific interests, in case the timings aren't matching and you want to pick up another project to do on the side and go out there, like your own research, write your own paper, and then publish it, and then use that as a stepping stone for your future career goals. That opportunity definitely exists. Yep. Thank you. Shire, you can take it back. Also,
I think there's a final question for College Lab. Uh, it's asking whether to start writing blogs, whether we need to follow the academic writing system and formats.
it completely depends on what you are interested in writing blogs. If a lot of content writers, for example, do not typically follow an academic writing format, it is definitely helpful if you know how to read academic literature and you can end up passing that back into your blogs. It just makes for a stronger blog, a more well-informed output. Academic writing does help in understanding structure. It also helps improve your critical thinking and your analytical skills. So that way, it would be helpful to have the skills of academic writing before you start writing blogs. But blogs in general are a great hand to, on your own, just pick up these skills, read a lot of other people's work, understand how they're doing their own structure, understand what examples they're using. Are they talking to other people? Are they, it's the same thing about just collecting a whole bunch of information and looking at your experiences and then concisely being able to present that to your audience.
Thank you, Tanya.
Mhm.
So, with that, I think we've come to the end of the session, and I find I'm very excited about this first session, that's this town hall that we've done today. We're going to keep on doing these town halls. And I just want to thank all of you for taking the last 2 hours to engage with us, to give us so many questions. If the research writing course at College Lab interests you, go for that. If there's other courses on writing, if there's other courses on statistics, on presentations, infographics, keep building your skills. That's the one big message. And the second big message is, don't worry about international organizations. There are loads of organizations out there that need good people. So don't just think about, okay, I have to get into ADB, I have to get into World Bank. These are brilliant organizations to work with. I absolutely feel very privileged to be contributing to these organizations, but it's not the end. There are loads and loads of other organizations out there. So keep doing your own research on what you find interesting as well. So with that, a big thanks to everybody, and thank you. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out the controls here. So yeah, so big thanks to everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in. And a recording of this session will be put on our website, that's nicoreassociates.com, for all of you to see. And a big thanks to the College Lab team for making time to be with us and for being here with their content and their insights. And a big thanks to Soham for managing the session, and to Mehek for actually doing the Nikore Associates presentation, and to Shayer and Tanya for the presentation from College Lab. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.